Yeah, and the whole Cleopas thing was like, you don't talk about something enough and they forget it. And so you know, I think I'm safe to say that I got away with it. And there's really nothing that can stop it now. So, yeah, no. Oh, are we on? Oh. And welcome back to Youth Group Radio, where quality is everything, quality and integrity. Let's go, Youth Group Radio. We love everybody. And we are back. I hope everything's going well with you guys. Let's open up to John chapter 7. John chapter 7. This is actually part 20 of our John study, believe it or not. And if you have missed any of this, feel free, go on our YouTube, which you're on right now, and just go to the playlists. And if you click the youth group playlist, it'll have all the parts of John and the other interlude stuff that we've done. So feel free, pop it on. But yes, so John chapter 7, we're going to be in verse 10. Here we go. We're just going to read a few verses. After his brothers had gone up to the festival, then he also went up, not openly, but in private. The Jewish leaders were looking for him at the festival, saying, "Where is he?" And there was a lot of murmuring about him among the crowds. Some were saying, "He's a good man." Others were saying, "No, on the contrary, he's deceiving the people." Still, nobody was talking publicly about him for fear of the Jews. When the Jewish festival was already half over, Jesus went up into the temple and began to teach. Then the Jews were amazed and said, "How is this man so learned, since he hasn't been trained?" Jesus answered them, "My teaching isn't mine, but is from the one who sent me. If anyone wants to do his will, he will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I am speaking on my own. The one who speaks on his own seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him." Let's pray. Jesus, you're good, you're faithful. We just ask that your will would be done in my life and these listeners' lives, Lord. Let your will be first and only in our hearts. We love you, Jesus. Show us yourself. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, so I have a question for all you listeners out there. How many of you speak Czech? Like the language Czech, like Czech. How many of you speak Czech? If you do, please leave it in the comments. Leave it in the comments below. Like, subscribe, double subscribe, triple unsubscribe, and then subscribe one more time, and just come out even. Okay. But I'm guessing probably maybe none of you, maybe some of you do. I don't know. It's the official language of the Czech Republic, or also known as Czechia. So why don't you speak it? I'm assuming most of you don't. So why don't you speak it? Well, maybe you think I wasn't born there. I never lived there. Okay, makes sense. But why haven't you learned it? Why haven't you ever learned the language of Czech? Well, I guess you think, well, I've never really had a need to. I never really saw the importance of me learning it. I never really felt the urge to learn this obscure Eastern European language that's never really touched my ears in my life before. Well, let me tell you a short story. One year, and this is true, one year during college, one of my best friends ended up learning Czech to the point where he could read it, speak it, and listen to it with ease. And it only took him 3 months. Yeah, you thought we were talking about the Bible today. This is just me going to inspire you to go learn a language in 3 months. Just kidding. No, but really, it was like he became an expert on this language overnight. It's like I didn't see him for 2 months, and then I see him again, and he's speaking Czech. He knows all about Czech. So the question we got to ask is, why? Why did he do that? Well, let me give you some clues. There was a girl at our college, and my friend had convinced himself that she was the love of his life. She was all he could think about. And he was determined to impress her and show her that maybe he is the love of her life. And here's the thing about this girl. She was an international student. And can you guess where she was from? You got it. She was from the Czech Republic. She spoke fine English. It was pretty broken English. But her native language was, of course, Czech. And now we begin to understand. We begin to understand why it only took my friend 3 months to learn a language. He was pretty motivated. He was quite infatuated with this girl. See, it wasn't 3 months of just doing 1 hour a day on Duolingo. No, it was 3 months of sleepless nights, spending 10, 12, 15 hours at a time. Nothing was going to stop him from learning this language, because for the first time in his life, he found himself truly wanting to learn Czech. You see, he could have never learned the language unless he wanted to learn the language. Maybe for some of you, different scenario. Your mom or dad, they always do the cooking. Maybe your mom offers to teach you how to make her special homemade mashed potatoes. It's your favorite dish, or whatever your favorite dish is. But your mom's going to teach you how to make those special homemade mashed potatoes. But you don't really listen to all the instructions, because you figure, well, it's really all going to taste best when my mom makes it, and it's easier when my mom makes it. But then one day, You're older and you're living far away from your parents and you're feeling homesick. And all you want to do is eat your mom's special homemade mashed potatoes. And you've tried to make some mashed potatoes yourself, but it just doesn't taste the same. And so you call your mom, or you FaceTime, or you Zoom her, and you listen to every word she says this time. You pay close attention to every minuscule detail. And this time, it worked. It tastes just like home. Because for the first time, you really wanted to learn the recipe. And that's when everything changed for you in the kitchen. Now, sometimes we say that we want to do something, but we never really mean it. Oh, I really want to learn how to play an instrument, but then you never practice. I really want to start running every day. That doesn't last after day one, right? I really want to insert whatever it is that you say you want to do, but it still isn't happening. If we truly want to do something, we do it. In our passage today, Jesus has privately traveled up to the big festival of shelters in Jerusalem. And when he gets there, it turns out all the people in the crowds are talking about Jesus. They're more whispering about Jesus. They're asking, where is the guy? And the main people asking that question were the Jewish leaders who were trying to find him, and they were seeking to kill him, which we learn as the story folds. But then the rest of the crowd, they were whispering answers. Answers to the question that we're supposed to ask when we read through John. And that question, of course, being, who is Jesus? And everyone is whispering their answers. Some are saying, hey, he's a good man. But other people are saying, no, he's just a fraud. He's deceiving everyone. But we learn in verse 13, everyone is having this debate of who is Jesus quietly among themselves because they're afraid of making the Jewish leaders upset and getting in trouble for talking about this Jesus guy. But then Jesus finally makes an appearance at the festival. In verse 14, he goes up to the temple and he just began to teach. And everyone who heard him was amazed. And they start to say, how is it that this man knows so much when he hasn't even been properly trained? Again, they're assuming that they know the answer to who is Jesus. They're saying, how is it that this man that I definitely know who he is, how does he know so much when he is unqualified and uneducated? You see, teachers in Judaism would normally have studied the law with one or more rabbis. They would have spent years perfecting their knowledge of the finer points of interpretation. But Jesus never attended such classes, and yet he obviously knew the scriptures extremely well and was able to expound them in a fresh and vivid way. Where had he got it all from? Then Jesus answers that question. He answers that question in verse 16. He says, my teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. And then verse 17, Jesus reveals to us the central clue to this passage. He first says, they're saying, oh, how is he teaching this? He's never even been educated. He says in verse 16, it's not mine. It's from the one who sent me. And then in verse 17, he really shows us the heart behind it. He says, if anyone's will is to do God's will, he will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I am speaking on my own authority. You see, what Jesus is saying here is, if anyone wants to do God's will, you hear that? If they want to do God's will, they will know whether the teaching which Jesus is giving comes from God or whether he's just making it up to boost his own position and reputation. If we want to do God's will, it becomes clear that Jesus really is from God. If you truly want to do God's will, you discover that the will of God is found fully in Jesus. But these religious leaders are approaching it the other way around. See, first they want to kind of measure up and weigh up Jesus' teachings, get some samples, and then they'll sit back and decide whether or not he has been sent by God. And I think that's a fine approach to take. It's a fine approach to take if you say, well, let me first listen to the teachings of Jesus, and then I will decide whether or not he's from God. But the only way that approach really works is if you are completely neutral. if you are completely unbiased, if you listen to Jesus with zero predetermined ideas about who Jesus is and who God is. That sounds kind of impossible, doesn't it? The Jewish leaders already have it in their minds that there are certain things that they do not want God to be saying. So if Jesus says those things, then they will just dismiss anything that Jesus is saying immediately. Just tune him out and have it in their heads that they have Jesus and God all figured out. And unfortunately, people do the same thing today. They have it in their heads just who God is. For many people, they think God is a hateful punisher. For other people, they think God is an energy that just kind of goes with the flow, and people think everything in between and outside of that too. And so if Jesus starts saying things that go against who they think God is, then he must not be from God, because we know who God is, apparently. And then there's people like us, church people. We still think that Jesus is from God, obviously, but we just ignore a lot of things he says and does and doesn't do. And we pick and choose bits and pieces of him in order to support our own agenda. Really, we take bits and pieces of Jesus, we ignore massive chunks of him in order for us to construct our own version of God that we are comfortable with. See, we want to use Jesus. We want to politicize Jesus. We want to criticize Jesus. We want to romanticize Jesus. But it seems like no one just wants to get to know Jesus, you know? According to verse 17, maybe the reason people can't see that Jesus comes from God is because they've already closed their minds against who God truly is and what his will truly is. We think we already know those answers. So we have to ask ourselves, do we really want God's will? Or do we want our will? Our agendas? Do we want our way? Or do we really want God's way? See, if you find yourself truly wanting God's will, then the teachings of Jesus will be like a cool, fresh drink on a hot, humid afternoon. Once you stop wanting your way, once I stop wanting my way, and I start wanting God's way, I will begin to see that there is no bread except for Jesus, who is the bread of life. Once I begin to want God's way, I begin to see that Jesus truly is from God. I begin to see that he is more than my feel-good mascot who supports my worldview. Look at verse 18 one more time. Verse 18. The one who speaks on his own seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him. See, verse 18, it sets the whole matter within a larger picture. And Jesus calls us to ask ourselves, whose reputation is Jesus building up? His own or God's? If you remember from last week, we saw Jesus' brothers try to get Jesus to go and impress everyone, build up his own reputation. They wanted him to appear in public as often as possible and become as famous as he could. But just look at the life of Jesus. He was never trying to boast his own reputation. Otherwise, why would he do things that would constantly get him into trouble and provoke threats to his life? And then you look at that moment when Jesus goes to his death. And he does it out of obedient love for God and self-giving love for the world. Someone who is trying to build up their reputation does not act in the way Jesus did. So who is Jesus? Well, we're never going to know until we begin to truly want God's way more than our way. Because if I'm wanting my way more, then I'm always going to make Jesus be the way that I want him to be. But when you begin to truly want God's way more than your way, when we get to that place, you begin listening to Jesus and you realize that God's way is far better than you could have ever dreamed. You know, I hope that you're listening right now, and I hope that you're wanting God's will more than your own. I hope that you're listening and that you're eager for Jesus to lead you. There are many churches all over the world who are just trying to build up their own reputation. It's not hard to identify. So many churches are trying to build up their own reputation. So many preachers, or you're just even Christians, trying to build up their own reputation. And that is why people want nothing to do with Jesus. Or that's why a lot of people want nothing to do with Jesus. Because as soon as someone sees that I'm just trying to build myself up, they see through the facade. It's just another scam. Oh, that they would just see Jesus in me. That they would just see Jesus in you. Not that we're going to be perfect, but that they would see Jesus, his sacrificial love in you, in me. But not that they would just see my version of Jesus in me, right? But that they would just see Jesus as he is. That I would let Jesus teach me just who he is. But here's the thing. You gotta want it. You have to want it. I mean, what do you even want? What do you want? What do you want from listening to this right now? Why are our wants so warped? Why are my desires so warped? Why don't I want what's truly best for me? Why do we always want the things that are destructive towards us, or the things that are really going to do us no good? Why don't we want what's truly best for us? Why does that happen? Listen, I don't condemn anyone for wanting the wrong things. But if you can admit that your desires are warped and completely self-centered, then you can begin to see that there is a brokenness inside of you and inside of all of us. I mean, just read the end of Romans chapter 7, where Paul talks about how when he wants to do the right thing, he always does the wrong thing. Because there's something inside him that wants the wrong thing more. And he's pointing out his brokenness. I asked my sister if I could tell this story. I remember when I used to live with my big sister Ruthie just a few years ago, and we would have long talks about God and faith, and she was growing so close to Jesus. But it seemed like the closer she got to Jesus, the harder the attacks got from Satan. And I remember when she would tell me in tears that she was just begging God to take away her wants, begging God to just take away her desires. Do you guys ever do that? Do you ever just like pray to God, like, please take this away? Like, please just take away this desire. We want God to just poof, make our warped desires just disappear. Please, God, I don't want this anymore. Take my desire away. Take it. I give it to you. Take it, please. I think we all have done that. But what I saw in Ruthie was she stopped wanting to not want something. She stopped praying that God would just take away her wants. And instead, she just started to want Jesus. And it grew. And there were tensions between her wanting Jesus and wanting other things. But it grew to the point to where she wanted Jesus more. And it just began to suffocate her unwanted wants. I think that should be the story of all of us. For us to want Jesus more. To want God's way more. To let go of our way. It's a good thing to let go of our self-centered lives. What do I want from this time of you listening? I want God's will to be done. I really do. What if the first thing that you say when you wake up tomorrow is, Lord, your will be done? What if throughout the day you kept praying, your will be done, Lord? And here's the thing about praying that God's will be done. It's not just something that you pray and then sit back and hope that you said the magic phrase. Say, oh, your will be done. And, you sit back and go like, all right, I hope it works. You go about your day normally. Jesus is praying in the garden and he says, Father, let this cup pass from me, but not my will, your will be done. And then he followed the Father's will. He didn't just say it, hey, your will be done, Father, and then just go about his business. He said, your will be done, and he followed the Father's will. He didn't sit back and say, I sure hope your will's done. No, he took his cross. He trusted the will of the Father, trusted that his death on the cross would be glorious, would be a victory over sin and death beyond understanding. When you pray, your will be done, that means it changes the way your entire day goes. It means it changes a saying like, Lord, no, not my way. Not my way today. Your way. Your will, God. And that should change the way your day goes completely as you trust Him and follow His way rather than your own. Would you take some time to think to yourself, maybe even pray? Just get alone and be and have a time of silence, a time of quietness, and ask God, what do I want? What do you want? And would you be so bold to say, Lord, give me your presence instead? What do I want? Identify it, what it is that you're wanting. And sometimes it's not even bad things, but it's things that are, it's all you want. It's all you want. Say, how about you give me your presence instead? Your will be done in my life. I love you guys. Peace out. If you need anything, hit me up. Youth Group Radio. We're the best.